Welcome to Stillwater Edge, the ultimate podcast for stillwater fly fishing enthusiasts. I'm your host, Greg Keenan, and in each short, action-packed episode, I'll share expert tips, essential techniques, and clever tricks to help you elevate your stillwater fly fishing game to the next level. Welcome to the Stillwater Edge podcast. I'm your host, Greg Keenan. Today, we're going to dive into a super important piece of the Stillwater puzzle, and that is fly rod length. Short rods versus long rods. Each has its strength and its place, and choosing the right one can make a big difference in how you fish, how you cast, and how many fish you put in the net. Let's jump to it. All right, full disclaimer before you jump into the show. If you're new to Stillwaters and you're listening and you have a 9-foot rod, typically it's going to be 9-foot 4-piece fly rod, you can still fish Stillwaters. Okay, I do want to get that out there. You can still fish Stillwaters. You're going to be able to do it. You're still going to catch fish. I do want to put that out there. But for those that are veterans, or if you are curious what rod to choose in Stillwaters, perhaps you're looking for a new rod. Hopefully this shows at the end of it's going to give you an indication as to what's going to work best in Stillwaters between a 9-foot and 10-foot rod. There's a bit of a difference here. I'm going to jump right to it. So what do I mean by short versus long rods? So when I say short rods, I'm going to be talking about a 9-foot to 9.5 feet rod. Okay. Long rods, they're going to fall between 10 to 10.5 feet rods. Both work well for Stillwaters in its own place. And we're going to jump into why each one matters. Why rod length matters in Stillwater fly fishing. Rod length impacts how far you can cast, how much control you have over your fly and your line, how much control you have over the fish when you're fighting it, how easily you can set the hook, and even how tired you feel at the end of the day. It's all about matching the rod to the environment and the tactic that you're actually going to fish. It's super important to understand that. So let's break down the pros and cons of each rod, because they each have a few, right? So let's start with short rods. And the pros of a short rod, because there's quite a few, is they're better at accuracy at short to medium ranges. And when I say short to medium ranges, I'm talking like 30-foot casts. Right? If you're anchored up and you're going to work an area, 30-foot cast, it's a great rod to choose. They're easier to manage in tight spots. So again, if you're a Stillwater angler and you're a bank fishing Stillwater angler, they're fantastic. A little area or a pond, 100%. They're lighter and they're easier on the arm for long days casting, right? They're great when fishing specific zones like structured edges or small bays at short distances. They're perfect for that. They're snappy, punchy casts with intermediate lines in close range. It doesn't get any better than using a really nice 9.5-foot rod or even a 9-foot rod. Those short distances. I love the punchy little casts that they do. But they do have some cons. And some of the cons are you have less control over long lines in complex presentations, like an indicator setup. Right? They're difficult to manage indicators or longer leaders effectively. You can do it, and they do it, but they're more difficult, and you're just adding more headache to yourself. I did it for years, though, full disclaimer, on a 9-foot rod, many years. They're not well suited for heavy lines and long-range casting. That I agree with. So if you're going to be doing those long bombs or fishing those big, heavy lines, they're not well suited for that situation as well. And you have limited leverage when playing fish at a distance, right? Leverage is key. Getting that pressure on that fish is absolutely key and critical. So you do have less leverage when playing fish at a distance. Absolutely. Long rods. The pros of long rods is that it has an extended reach. It improves line control, mending, lifting longer lines. They're ideal for indicator setups and long leader tactics. Again, they are ideal for indicator setups and long leader tactics. They're great for boat fishing, float tubes, where reach is key. And everyone knows that reach is key in a boat. They handle slack and crosswind situations way more effectively. They excel at controlling and steering fish during the fight, especially on lighter tippets. Long rods do have some cons, though. They can feel heavier and less responsive if they're not balanced right. So making sure that you balance your line correctly to that, especially when you start getting into like a 10-foot 6 rod. They're slightly more tiring during longer casting sessions. They're way more awkward in tighter quarters or where space is limited. Even in transport, if you have a bag and you're transporting these rods, there's not too many suitcases that are made for 10-foot 6 rods. So that's the pros and cons of each, because they do have that. They're really important. Hopefully I've opened your mind up to a bit of what one excels in which situation, but I want to break it down to matching your rod to your situation. So I want to point out when to use each rod in each situation and when it's going to really excel. Right. So I want you to use a short rod when you're doing the following. If you're fishing from a bank and space is limited behind you, a short rod's going to excel. If you need a quick, accurate cast in a specific pocket of it or area, short rod's going to excel. If you're on small still waters doing short range searching casts, a short rod's going to excel. If you want a compact weight setup for all day comfort, a short rod's going to excel. When to use a long rod? When is the right situation? If you're fishing from a boat, float tube, or even doing lock drifting, long rod is 100% going to excel. If you're doing indicators, I wouldn't use anything else but a long rod, right? Indicators, long leaders, all that requires that precision control. That is when it's going to excel. If you need to lift and recast long lines all day effectively, that long rod's going to excel. If you're dealing with wind, waves, or heavy slack presentations, long rod's going to excel. If you want maximum control when fighting a fish and steering fish around obstacles and giving you more reach, a long rod's going to excel. If you want to fish the hang more effectively, a long rod's going to excel. All right, guys, the breakdown, the pros and cons of each one. If your goal is to invest and get one rod, one all-purpose rod for stillwater fly fishing, based on what I said, what would I go with? I would go with a 10-foot rod. It covers almost all scenarios, from indicator fishing to pulling flies, casting well. It does pretty much everything you're going to need. But if you are one of those bank fishermen in your home waters or your home still water that you're going to is tight, close quarters, having a smaller rod is 100% going to play a key factor. But if you're a boat fisherman and you go to many different still waters, a 10-foot 6-weight rod's going to excel. All right, guys, that wraps up today's episode of the Stillwater Edge. Rod length might seem like a minor detail, but it plays a major role in how you fish and how effectively you connect with that fish. Very important. If you enjoyed this show, please tell a friend. Help us grow. Help me grow. As always, guys, you're great. I'll see you guys on the water. Tight lines.